Hi guys, what is going on and welcome back to another video on Total War Arena. So it feels like it's been actually quite a long time since I last checked in with this game, and a few people actually mentioned it and I thought, well, it is kind of worth going back, seeing where the game is at, what's changed, and kind of just what position is the game now in. So for those of you who don't know, obviously Total War Arena shut down back in like 2018, back in the West. But since then, the rights to the game got brought out by the Chinese company NetEase, and the game has been re-released over in China. But you are still able to play without a VPN, and with a little bit of modelling and sort of fiddling with some of the back-end files, you can get the game back into English. It is all still perfectly playable. We actually had a few games on it, probably 6 or 12 months ago when this first released in China. It was kind of cool to see what was, actually going on from a Total War Arena point of view. And initially, the base game seemed very similar to the Total War Arena we all sort of knew and loved back when it was in the West, except that there was some slight changes to the game mode where it wasn't quite the same sort of fight to the death. You actually got the option to respawn, and it turned it into a little bit more of a MOBA, which is not necessarily quite what I enjoyed, but still, it was kind of cool to be back in the game. Ping-wise, you're getting around, and I'm still getting around about 300 on the ping, which is playable in a game like this. Ping isn't too crazy important. It doesn't have to be, absolutely spot on. But since I last logged in, quite a bit's changed, particularly around the factions. We've actually, since then, we've had all the Chinese leaders added in. From Tao Tao, Lu Bu, etc. Quite a few of them have been added in. I guess a lot of the files have probably been ported over from Total War 3 Kingdoms, but it's added in quite a lot of stuff. And from what I've heard, they are definitely on the more powerful side of the commanders that are available. And they've kind of mixed things up a little bit. Now, I haven't actually gone around to actually unlocked any of these, because I've been having a really hard time actually getting any matchmaking to find any fights against other human players. I don't know if that's because it's trying to find other EU players to match me against, or if the game is just struggling for numbers a little bit now. But generally, so far, I've found that I've only been able to get battles against the AI, even while queuing for quite long periods of time. Although, perhaps go and try and give it back a little bit more of a go, maybe later on tonight when it might be slightly more prime time on Saturday evening. Anyway, let's hop into a little bit of battle. We can see what the changes are like in terms of some of the battle gameplay, and we can talk a little bit more about what's changed in the game since. The core game itself is actually, really similar. It actually plays very similarly. I was just trying out the Romans a little bit, playing with Germanicus, and I must say, it does feel really strange to actually ever be back playing this game. I know I've actually played it since it re-released in China, but it does feel odd to be playing it again. Spent so long playing this game back in the day, and yeah, it always feels strange nostalgia vibes to actually be back playing this game. So, as I was saying, I was having a really hard time getting any actual matchmaking. I don't know if that's because, as I say, the game is trying to make you basically fight against other EU players, because when I queued up into the AI matchmaking system, you'll see I actually joined the game with a handful of other players, but the bulk of them, the 5 there that you can see named on the left side of the screen, were obviously European players. So it seems like that maybe the matchmaking is pushing it that way. It's either that, or the game has obviously maybe been a bit of a flop in China and hasn't really drawn in the sort of number of players they're looking for. I mean, if anyone has any details about how successful it has been over there, I would be kind of interested to know, because it'd be kind of cool to know if the game's sort of done well or not. I guess the fact that because it's sort of set in China now, and we don't really have the same sort of community as there used to be, that has kind of lost that aspect of the game. There's not quite the same sort of Discord groups and forums and that same sort of atmosphere that there used to be in the game, and that to some extent does kill your enjoyment of it a little bit. And that slightly refers back to sort of the title of the video, is the game worth playing now? I think unless you really remember it and really have strong nostalgia of the game, then I think it's probably going to be tough to really enjoy it beyond kind of that a little bit of a nostalgia hit that you're going to be getting for it, and kind of the fun of checking it out, because I just don't think they're necessarily the player numbers and interest in it anymore. It's obviously interesting that since I've last played this, they've really pushed in all the Chinese factions. I guess that's kind of understandable and sort of inevitable. I mean, I'm sure the Chinese market, which the game is focused towards, are going to be wanting to have the Chinese factions. I mean, that completely makes sense. And I guess they've got a lot of the assets from Total War 3 Kingdoms, from which they've drawn it from. because as far as I'm aware, the game is actually still being developed by Creative Assembly, but effectively just under license for NetEase. So it's still CA in the UK doing the development work, but they're just not pushing it out. And unfortunately, I haven't heard anything at all about the idea of this game coming back towards the West, because it'd be really cool if it did, of course, but I think it's probably looking increasingly unlikely that that's going to be happening. In terms of actual battle gameplay, despite the fact the combat is the same, the actual game modes are actually quite different from where the game used to be, back in 2018. So obviously previously there used to be 2 teams of 10 players, and you used to have a base point each. Then it was basically you either wipe out the other team or you capture the enemy team's base point. And that, personally, for me, worked quite well. I found that quite enjoyable. But that has changed quite a lot now. So there are a series of capture points all around the map. You can kind of see them on the minimap, A through E. And these capture points give you a ticking score. So if you control more of the capture points, you're gaining more sort of ticking score. And as you can see at the moment, the enemy is actually captured quite a few more points and is gaining score quite a bit quicker than we are. If they get to the maximum, get that bar to the max, then that is a victory for them. And remember, once you die, you can actually just respawn, and it has a pretty short respawn timer. And as you'll see shortly in a minute, once we kill off these remaining enemy swordsmen, enemy Roman swords and cavalry, and actually get through and capture the E point, by capturing the E point, we get a healing point pop up, and I'm going to be able to go back and get my units healed back up to full strength and continue the fight on. So that means I guess I've not got to travel back from the back of the map. And that's one of the things that has actually seemingly made cavalry quite dominant in this game, is because you now have quite far distances in which you have to travel, being able to have good mobility ends up becoming a really essential part of the game. So you see, now we've captured that point, there's actually a healing zone at the back. In the meantime, we do get this enemy cavalry travelling across, but we actually managed to get the charge off into them, so to be honest, they took quite a lot of damage straight from the off, and with 3 units of Roman swords pushing into them, yeah, they were never really going to be lasting very long. So it's the first team to basically get the maximum score. Or you still do have the option of capturing the enemy base, but you have to have a route to get to the enemy base. So actually you can see on the minimap at the bottom, it goes from our base to the B point, which we own. Then we go down to the E point, which we also own. And because we own the E point, the enemy team can't capture the B point until they capture E first. But now we've captured the E point, that gives us an option to attack the enemy base. We can push on, and if I can capture that enemy base, then that is game, set and match, irrespective of what the score is. In some sense, I get why they've done this. Obviously, the original Total War Arena failed in all of essential purposes. They weren't able to get the game going to the right extent. And so they're obviously trying out different game modes in an attempt to try and make it more viable. For me, I kind of miss the old game modes though. I liked it that when you sort of outplayed or outflanked and killed an enemy unit, you killed it. That was it. That's it, dead for the match. Now, of course, you kill them and they just respawn 10 seconds later back at their base point. So it kind of feels like, I don't know, a little bit of a shame sometimes and quite hard to actually push through in that sort of sense. So I'm not sure it's necessarily much of an improvement. You also now have unit promotions. If you look at the unit icons, you'll notice each of them has a little rank, and the more damage, the more capture points, etc., they slowly gain more ranks through the battle, and this gives them some fairly significant buffs. They get things like increased melee attack damage, weapon penetration, etc., and by the time you get to the high ranks, it really starts to put buffs at like 75%, and actually really gives a significant buff to the unit. So if you can start to get that early damage in, then you can start to get your unit quite a lot more dominant quite quickly, just from having that sort of initial advantage early on in the game. So I guess that yet again leads us back to our original question. Is Total War Arena playing kind of in its current state? I think if you played it originally, then I think it probably is worth having a little bit of a download and a revisit. It is of course still free to play. It does take a little bit of fangling to work your way through the Chinese website, because of course, well, unless you're Chinese, you're not going to speak Chinese, and it makes it a little bit confusing, but obviously it's not really marketed for us. But you of course don't need a VPN to be able to take advantage of it. You can play it for free, and it is still quite good fun, and it does certainly bring back some pretty cool nostalgia vibes. But anyway, I shall leave you with the rest of this little bit of battle as we push on to their base point and start to pressure their final cap. But hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and if you have, do let me know what you think about Total War Arena. Do you remember playing it back in the day? Do you share some of my nostalgia vibes, or have you never even heard of the game before? Either way, let me know what you think in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe to the channel for lots more random historical content. Let's go with that, because I don't think there's going to be a lot more Total War Arena content. Thanks for watching, and I shall see you all on the next video.
Survivors! Run! Swordsman! Attack! Swordsman! Attack! Rip them apart! Quickly! Swordsman! Destroy them! Swordsman! Raise the eagle! Kinani has fallen! Apace! Lead your blades!